it's noteworthy that Gary Patterson of TCU stepped down after over 2 decades at the school, and we have to remember he and his TCU Horned Frogs were jobbed in the first playoff system in 2014, the first playoff rankings, and the whole controversy surrounding TCU and Baylor in 2014 was that the rankings that were disclosed week to week had no bearing on the final decision. Remember, TCU was number 3 in the next to last rankings, and it beat Iowa State by 52 points in its final game and still got leapfrogged. And what does that say? Ohio State was the TV draw. TCU wasn't. It comes down to the helmets. We know this. Alabama was the better helmet school than Ohio State in 2017. The conference championship as a criterion for inclusion, nope, didn't matter. This is an ESPN-driven thing. It's all about TV. The weekly rating shows are just to get everybody's blood boiling. All that really matters is the final decision in early December. So if people watching Mark Rogers, the voice of college football, don't invest your emotions in these weekly rankings. Focus on the final one, and then be prepared to be disappointed, and be prepared for another helmet scenario. And the helmet scenario affecting the Pac-12 is if it's 12-1 Oregon against 12-1 Ohio State, hey, no argument from me. Oregon should be the choice. Oregon went into Columbus, won that game without Kayvon Thibodeau, beat Ohio State straight up. It should be Oregon. No argument from me. But we know what the decision is likely to be. It's likely to be Ohio State because it has the bigger national brand, going to be sexier on television, put the Buckeyes up against Georgia in a semifinal. I mean, we know that it's a TV-driven, ESPN-driven process. So just keep all of that in mind. And frankly, I would recommend watching the World Series or even election night coverage more than this college football circus, because it's not really grounded in substance. And to bring it back to TCU in 2014, one final time, Mark, not to belabor the point too much, but just has to be said, the first year of the playoff needed to provide a structured, clear, ordered criteria. Just tell us what's the number 1 criterion, number 2, number 3, number 4, etc. Just tell us what is needed to get in. And that first year couldn't provide that kind of clear, obvious structure. And it showed to everybody that this was just a dressed up version of the BCS with 4 teams instead of 2. Basically, it's just made for television. It's dictated by television. So the credibility of the system was lost back then in the first year. We shouldn't think that this system is going to somehow gain credibility or see the light or somehow become newly objective. It's all about television. It's depressing, but it's the truth, and everybody should know it.
Well, what certainly gives us an indication to back up your claim there is that while I would say that the committee does give us markers as to what they value, they reorder the markers and they assign different weights to those markers all the time, to the point where once we got about 3 or 4 years into this, they finally just started to default to, well, we just select the 4 best teams.
Yep. They always change the goalposts. Yep. That was clear from the beginning. And year one set that template, and established it, that we're just going to make whatever arguments suit our positions and our interests, which is really what college football poll debates have been about since the beginning of time. And just to be clear about one thing, what we should have always done and what college football still could do, for people who don't like the idea of a 12-team playoff, that it's too much, even the people who don't like 8 teams, a +1 after the bowls. That's been the solution, which has always been there, available, and it causes the least amount of disruption, and you preserve that 1980s New Year's Day style where you have all the big bowl games. And, that was in the 80s when I grew up. I mean, this is not just nostalgia from me. It's also, a time when, the fans in a Texas-based school, a Southwest Conference school, they'd throw cotton onto the field. SEC fans would throw sugar cubes on the field. Big 8 fans would throw oranges on the field. Every team or fan base in their own region of the country was happy to go to their signature bowl game, cotton, orange, sugar, etc. That we all want that. We want that tradition. We want that passion, and we want that regional identity in college football. So the BCS destroyed all that, and made USC fans unhappy that they were going to play in the Rose Bowl. It overturned that sense of tradition. But with the +1 after the bowls, you can maintain that tradition-rich structure that we all love, and you can still have a national championship game after all the bowls have been played. You look through so many of the pre-BCS disputes: Washington, Miami, 1991, Georgia Tech, Colorado, 1990, on and on and on. Not all of them, but many of them would have been solved by a +1 game after the bowls. And it's just sad that, the power structure in college football does not show any inclination to want to do that, because it's just not enough TV inventory. But, as we contemplate these first playoff rankings and this playoff system, that's what college football always should have been tried. It always should have pursued the +1, and it still hasn't. And it's a point of real sadness for me, because that would have married tradition with what's likely to produce a legitimate national championship game most years, if not all.
I'll withhold my opinion just because I've got a zillion call-in shows and everybody can call me and you can ask me what I think about the playoff and the way it should be done. But what makes total sense about what Matt's saying is we are living in a state of college football right now where even the likes of the Cotton Bowl last year, Oklahoma, Florida, has been turned into a sham, been turned into a no contest, where basically Dan Mullen said, we're not even the same Florida team. It doesn't matter. It was a joke. The Cotton Bowl, we're not talking about like third-tier poll games being reduced to nothing. We are at that point, and everything that you just stated would make the major bowl games, would restate the value, would reinsert the value of the bowl, because you would have to win one of those major bowl games to have a chance to be considered for the national championship game. So it does reinstate the value and tradition of everything that we grew up, all those iconic pictures of Ohio State and Michigan players after the game carrying roses in their mouths, because to your point, the oranges on the field and the cotton on the field, it was just, it meant everything for those regions and conferences to go to those bowl games and represent their conference. And then we would still have the championship game right after. It would be phenomenal.
It's the marriage. It's the marriage of both. Yep.